Hey guys, so I think this is going to be a really difficult video for me to film because I have to take something that I usually like to spend a month of class and mush that down into 15 minutes. So it's kind of a bummer. This is kind of one of my favorite things to talk about with science, and coronavirus took that, so that's cool. So anyways, moving on. We had a question, or I posed a question when we were talking about our mammals. When I said that, whales are in the same group as pigs, and that's crazy, right? So I'm going to explain, or try to explain in 15 minutes, how that's true, why whales are mammals, and more specifically, why they're in the group with pigs, okay? Now, the short answer is evolution. The long answer is what I'm going to try and explain here. So, first of all, I would like for you guys to play an imagine game with me, okay? I want you to imagine a squirrel, okay? And he's just living his squirrel life, and because squirrels are social animals, there's probably, 30 squirrels that he hangs out with and interacts with, and, they mate, and they, share food, and they do all the things that squirrels do, okay? And something crazy happens, and for some reason, the group that he's living in gets split into two, okay? Now maybe, these guys got chased away and they can't get back to the main group. Maybe there was an earthquake or, something crazy happened and they were split in half, okay? Now, the longer that they live apart from each other, the more they are going to go on with their own lives. Okay, so this guy is going to figure out how to live over here. This guy is going to figure out how to live over here. And the longer and longer that they do that, the more adapted they are going to become to their own environment. Okay, so like this, for example. Okay, so we've got these two squirrels, and it's really obvious that they're really similar, but they do have some differences, okay? This guy's got gray ears, his ears are all black. This guy has a big fluffy white tail. This guy's got a little kind of gray tail, okay? So they're starting to adapt to where they live. And because they live in different places, that means that they're starting to look different from each other, okay? Now, in the case of these two squirrels, this is a real thing that happened to them. And the thing that separated them was the formation of the Grand Canyon. So these guys used to live, they used to be, the same squirrel. They used to look the same, and they lived right here. And then this river came through and cut their population in half. These are the Kaivab squirrels that live on this side, and these are the Aver squirrels that live on this side of the Grand Canyon. And because they have been living apart for a really long time, they're starting to look different, okay? And more than that, if you look at their DNA is starting to change as well, because they are adapting and they are getting good at living on these opposite sides of the Grand Canyon. So they are at a fundamental level changing from each other, okay? Now, if we look bigger than that, we all used to live in the same place, okay? We all used to live on the same continent, okay? Pangea. A long time ago, all the continents used to be mushed together into one, and we all lived together, okay? But because of the way that plate tectonics is, those continents separated, and so the populations that lived together got pulled into half. Okay, so you have a population of bears that used to be all the same, and they're living and hanging out. And as they get farther apart from each other, they're going to become different. Okay, they're going to adapt to living in these new and different places. And because this sloth bear lives in a really different place than this panda bear, they're going to adapt to their own individual place, and it's going to be different. Okay, so you can't expect a giant panda bear and an American black bear to have a baby anymore, because they have adapted so well to their new place that they don't even look the same, they don't even act the same, and genetically they are different now. Okay, so there's a lot of animals that have done this. Okay, so if you look at possums, we have possums here in America, and they have possums over in the UK. Okay, now because those are very different places, our possums look very different. okay? They have adapted to living in the location that they are currently at. Now, the longer that they do this, the farther they get from each other, okay? I like to say, as an example, you know, me and my husband are holding hands right here, okay? And he takes, you know, one step northeast, and I take one step northwest, okay? Now, if we're one step, we're still really close to each other, but the farther we walk in those separate directions, the farther away we're gonna get from each other. Does that make sense? So it's the same with these guys. The longer that they go in different directions, the farther they're gonna get from each other, okay? Now, if this goes on for a really long time, you're gonna get organisms that are really different. Okay, so over here is a giant armadillo, and this is a pangolin. These guys live in the US, these guys live over in Africa, okay? Now, if you look at their DNA, they are like first cousins to each other, but they have a ton of stuff that is different because they used to be the same group that just split in half and then started going in different directions, okay? That's what evolution is, by the way, is it is adapting to your area for a really long time, okay? So, the longer that you let them do this, the farther away from each other they are going to get. That's basically what we're saying here, okay? So, sometimes, if we're really, really lucky, now this doesn't always happen because fossils are hard to find and they're hard to make, and it involves a lot of chance and a lot of like perfect things happening all at once. But sometimes if we're really, really lucky, we can find fossils that show us what that thing used to look like before it adapted to the place where it lives now. So one of the animals that we've been really lucky to find lots of good fossils for is horses, which is this guy right here, okay? So, 5 million years ago, this is what horses used to look like. And 20 million years ago, this is what horses used to look like. And 28 million years ago, this is what horses used to look like. And so we can kind of rewind the clock by looking at the DNA and the fossils to see, hey, this is what horses used to look like. And then their environment changed and they had to adapt. And now they look like this. That's crazy. Okay, now this is super cool, and it's like a neat thing to just imagine like what must have happened in this guy's life to get him to eventually look like this. But a cool thing that this allows us to do is if you take a zebra's fossil history, this guy is in the zebra's history as well. So that's how we know that zebras and horses are closely related to each other, is because they share a common ancestor. It's kind of like they have the same grandpa, if that makes sense, okay? So, we are extremely lucky when this happens. It's not that common, okay? Because it's really hard to find a fossil, and fossils are like really rare, and if you think about how many organisms are alive on the earth today, not all of them are going to be fossils, and it's just whatever. Being an archaeologist has got to be a nightmare. So, I want to talk real quick about the whale, because that's what we're here to talk about, is why are whales mammals? They live in the water. Like, what? So, here we have a whale, okay? And this is the whale skeleton. So first of all, I want you to notice a couple things. One, this is a baleen whale. This is a great whale, like one of those big ones that's got the teeth that look like brushes, okay? So you can tell that because of the head right here. But I do want you to notice right up here is where the nose is, because if you look at us from the side, it's basically like their teeth, like this part of their body has just went whoop. So the nose is right here, and that's what the blowhole is on a whale. That's why their breathing is up here, is because that's their nose, which is kind of cool. Anyway, so you'll notice a couple of things. First of all, they have a shoulder and a hand. Okay, so they, just like us, have a shoulder with an upper bone, 2 bones here, and then a wrist with 5 fingers. Okay, so just like us, they have the same kind of arms as we do, except their arm is encased in a big layer of fat. Okay, so that they have those flippers. But it's not a fin, because they have a hand in there. Okay, if you wanted to, you could go and cut the flipper and make them have 5 fingies. Okay, another thing I want you to notice is this back here. Okay, this is a pelvis and then the leg bones. Okay, Now, these do not extend to the outside of the body. They are stuck up in their body, but they have what used to be legs, okay? Now, this is called a vestigial structure. We have some of them as humans, and it's really cool. So a couple of ours, we have like 12, but a couple of obvious ones are our wisdom teeth, our appendix, and our arm hair. Okay, these are things that we don't really need, but we have them, which is strange. Like, why do we have them? Well, the reason why we have them is, if we go back, maybe our ancestor used them. Maybe our ancestor had a bigger head, so that way they had more teeth that they had room for, and our head is smaller because we've adapted to something, so we don't have room for all these teeth. Okay, that's exactly what happened. Same with our appendix. Maybe our ancestors used it for something and we don't anymore, which is exactly why, we have, wisdom teeth still, and the appendix still, and arm hair still, and the muscle that raises those arm hairs up still. We have those things, but we don't use them. But our ancestors used to, so we've inherited them, okay? The same way that this whale inherited legs, even though it doesn't use them, okay? So, I want to tell you the story of the Ambulocetus, okay? He existed on our planet a really long time ago. He's very similar to what we refer to as pigs today, okay? The only difference is he's kind of hairier, so maybe like a wild pig, and he's got this big old tail, okay? So this guy was a omnivore. He ate meat and veg just like a pig does. But the problem for him was that there was a lot of animals similar to him. Okay, so it was kind of hard for him to get food. So what he decided to do was he decided to go and kind of wade in the water and catch fish, because there weren't a lot of animals like him catching fish, okay? So he made the decision, I'm going to go hang out in the water and catch these fish, okay? Now, if we fast forward through time, he will adapt and get better at catching fish, because that is where he is headed, okay? That is his niche. That is his, spot, okay? He's going to be a fish catcher, okay? So if we zoom forward in time, we see this, which is his great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandson, okay? This is a Pakicetus, okay? So you can see, still hairy, still same basic body structure as the guy before, but the limbs are changing a little bit. So he's getting better at swimming. He is adapting to living in water, okay? Now, if we fast forward again, we zoom way forward, we have this, okay? He lost the hair, and his limbs are starting to get way better at swimming. So he is very clearly becoming a swimmer now, okay? And if we zoom forward again, we have this, okay? And from here, there was an explosion in variety, which leads to all the whales and cetaceans that we have today, okay? And all of these guys came from this, okay? It's kind of like how I live in a really big family. I have 35, no, more than that. I have probably around 60 cousins, okay? But we all came from my great-grandpa. Okay, so we're very fortunate with whales because they live in the water. We have the direct A to B to C to D to whale of how they have changed over time, okay? We're very fortunate that we have that. Now, that's not the case for a lot of animals, and so for a lot of animals, the way that we determine who is related to who is by the DNA. Okay, now we've talked about DNA a ton. If you look at my DNA compared to my brother's, it's going to be almost identical because we're related, okay? If you look at my DNA compared to a whale's DNA, it's going to be a little bit similar because we're both mammals, okay? So that's how we get the more far-fetched things, by putting, this whale with that pig and saying these guys are cousins. That's wild. But if you look at their DNA, they're very similar. And then if you look at their history and how they have changed over time, that is how we are making those conclusions. If have questions, please email me. I know this is hard.